Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. It's great to have you here. We are here to answer your questions on media and production 7 days a week. And that means that you can get those questions into us via Makana, where you can also chat about the questions. You can vote on the questions. And today, voting is going to be especially important. We've already got a ton of questions stacking up, and your votes drive the show. If you're not in Makana, never fear. You can also just go to askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global, and that's open 7 days a week. So if you're watching this later and you want to get a question into the show, all you got to do is askofficehours.global, name, question, and we'll get it into the show in the next couple days. Alexander, let's get started with the first question.
First question this morning is from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. Other than the glowing screen and less robotic voice, what are the top most important changes to Siri with Apple Intelligence on iOS 18.1 on the iPhone and iPad?
Go ahead, Alex.
This is still in beta, so I don't know if there's a lot of features that are working the way that they should yet. So I don't know what the most important ones are. I mean, I have a very low expectation from Siri. I think the thing that I've been the most excited about from iOS 18 or iPadOS is the calculator. I just can't stop using the calculator. Like, what about this? And what about this? And it seems to work. So that's the feature that I've been the most excited about so far. A lot of people are talking about the text editing features, but I don't know anybody talking about the Siri features right now as far as anything added that people have really noticed. It
seems to have figured out that Nicholas is the long form of Nick, because I often ask it to call my brother, and it gets confused. Next question.
Vic Hernandez in Springfield, Missouri is asking, in the market for desktop computer speakers, I had BOSE but gave them to the neighbors. No production work, preferably less than $250, leaning towards KLIPSCH ProMedia 2.1. Any thoughts or recommendations?
Alexander, start us off.
I am a big fan of those speakers, the KLIPSCH ProMedia, and I have never found a pair of speakers that sounded better specifically for that price range for computer speakers. I used to have a pair of their 5.1 ProMedia computer speakers, and they were fantastic. I used to play games on them all the time, and they sound great. I would go for them.
Jesse?
I'm a little bit partial to the Z625 speaker system from Logitech. Not great, but they definitely get you across the finish line, and we can also plug our rickety old phonograph into those, and it works just fine.
Bill?
The category, desktop computer speakers, has a lot of options and variety in it. Well, a lot of us, though, move to the next classification, I think, up, which is near-field monitors. They are designed to be about the same geometry, something you're going to put on the top of your desk, but near-fields are really designed more for music monitoring. As such, they tend to have more stable cabinets, more weight in, and often the ones that are out there modern have power amps inside of them that are built for matching the speaker output, so you can get a really good sound using near fields. I'm partial to the small JBL line. I think I use 305s here at my desk, and to me that's the kind of step up process from going with a pure computer speaker. Not to say that those are bad necessarily, but that's where I kind of live.
Jason?
Yeah, I'm partial to small studio monitors. I think they sound really great. Let's see, the last pair that I got were Mackie CR5X, and they're tiny and they're powered, and they'll take just about anything you want in and sound great going out.
Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas is asking, Amazon is taking over abandoned malls and using them to sell return merchandise dirt cheap. $1 for a Tesla charge adapter. How do you find one near you? And is this a way to supplement your income? Buy stuff there and resell on eBay, Craigslist.
Courtney?
It could be a form of additional income. It is quite there's a going industry in this. In fact, I found a website here with a blog that says how that one's from Ecom Crew is where that blog was. But there are a lot of people out there that are buying and selling and unpacking these things online that you can take a look at. I would think if they're taking over a closed mall to sell this stuff, paying the air conditioner bill in these hot summer days is probably going to eliminate all of their profit, though.
Alex?
I would think really hard about buying things at $1. Like, it's just, I mean, there's just like this a temptation. The Temu, I think they're really responding to Temu. And there's this like, oh, it's going to be less expensive, but you're just buying junk. You're just buying junk that will be junk soon. That's all. I wouldn't try.
Guy?
Yeah, I went to one of these in Escondido, California at the local mall, and the way that they do it is the first day the stuff's a little higher price, and then it gradually goes down, and they put one up here in Washington as well. And I walked around in there, and the stuff, it's so competitive. The missus was telling me that when she went in there, there was just people lined up on the first day. Like you could barely, it gets kind of chaotic, if you will, for people trying to find those really good bargains. And then the thing is on eBay, like I have 20,000 feedback on eBay, and it's hard to do this stuff without having a system where we would make money off of selling not only the good, but also getting discounts through UPS to be able to get cheaper prices at volume. So to get this going into a real, not just supplementing your income, but into a real thing, you need to keep track of the inventory. You need to be looking up the items that are completed. So on eBay, this question was earlier in the week, where you look up completed listings, and then you want to see when was it sold to get a decent idea as to what it should go for. And so it's just a waiting game at that point. How long do you want to hold on to that inventory and deal with it? Because you can have tens of thousands of items, and some of them might be good, some of them might not be so good. So it's a gamble. I wouldn't get into it.
Next question.
Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York is asking, with my ATEM Mini Pro ISO, is there a way to have each input recorded with the audio that is also coming in via HDMI? Hoping to not have to edit each ISO video and ISO audio together.
Alex?
There is. I know everyone's surprised. There is. It's record on the camera. so if you have it before, if you have those audio sources going into the cameras, you can record to the camera. But yeah, I believe that all the ISOs are going to record program audio to all the ISOs will get the same program audio. So I don't think there's any way to get the isolated inputs from those any other way. So you want to record them separately. Remarrying them, even up to 8 of them, is going to be inconvenient, but it doesn't take actually that long. I mean, in your head, it takes much longer than it actually takes if you just throw them in. And a lot of the tools now, I know Final Cut and Resolve, I don't know Premiere as well, have a lot of auto features that will lock the stuff in for you pretty fast.
Jesse?
I believe that there is an audio folder on when you load up your ISO drive, and those audio ISOs should be the camera inputs, not the master mix, and you can take that audio and jam it into
You'd still have to remarry it, though, right?
Yeah, you'd have to remarry it, but you do have that on the SSD when you pull it off the ATEM, at least to start with.
Next question.
From the QR code, Gabriela Chesso-Mistiera and Susay Marie is asking, trying to help a teacher deliver a short DCP video to a theater for student project competition. I'm using Resolve. How can I check if it's output correctly for them?
Alex?
Unless you really have a lot of time, you just have to decide how much time, not so much your time, but how much time does the theater have to go back and forth. I would export it as an MXF and then get a DCP service to wrap it up for you. DCP is a pretty complicated process, and I wouldn't, if I hadn't done one before, I don't think I would try to make this my first one unless your theater is open to you playing with it. Now, most of those projectors also, as a reminder, will have oftentimes an SDI or HDMI input that you can use. They're used for presentations, for their ad slides, for even live input. So you may be able to sidestep all of this by doing it that way. It will probably be in 1080p instead of 4K. A lot of them don't have 4K inputs, so the DCP is the only way to do that. So you have to decide. And also, if you're talking about 4K, think about how big the screen is. Now, chances of someone seeing the difference once it's projected onto the screen, you make sure that the theater is large enough, typically larger than a 30-foot screen, or you're not going to see the difference. In what's going to happen, it's all going to be about the same softness.
Bill?
And just from personal experience, don't just audit the picture, audit the sound. I had a circumstance many years ago where I was helping a friend with a student film, and they unfortunately managed to put most of the dialogue on one side of the track, and when it was summed in the theater, there was terrible cancellation on every other voice. So in dialogue scenes, one person would be front and center. The other would be about 15 dB down. It was not a pleasant experience. So don't just watch your DCPs, listen to them and make sure you're delivering audio correctly. Mono is your friend for theatrical presentations on this level.
Alex?
Yeah, finding out what they actually have there. Mono could have some other unintended situations there, depending on how large the screen is and where the speakers are. So you want to know what kind of system you have there. Is it a stereo system for a very small theater? Typically, it wouldn't be. It would be typically a minimum of a 5.1 system. If you do a 5.1 system, you do want to think about where you're putting everything. Your dialogue should be in the center speaker. And if you send it down left, right, what's going to happen is you're going to have, if you do a stereo mix, people sitting on one side of the theater will say it'll sound heavy on that side of the theater. People standing on the other side of the theater will heavy on that side of the theater because you sent left and right, and those are the first two channels, but that's all you're going to get. Then after that, you're going to have center, LFE, left surround, right surround. And so you want to think about what that mix was going to look like if they have a 5.1. But the most important thing, if you're not going to do a 5.1 full mix, is to understand that dialogue needs to go down the center channel, which is channel 3. So that is something that is, channel 3 in most theaters. Not always channel 3, but mostly channel 3. And so those are things for you to think about. But as Bill said, he's completely right that you want to listen to it in the theater once you get it there, and you want to find an opportunity to look at it before you burn it to DCP, unless you can do this over and over and over again, because you're going to listen to that mix, and the near field speakers that you mixed it in, hopefully, a lot of times when you're doing a student film, you might have mixed it in headphones, which is completely inappropriate for a film. Near field will get you a little closer, but still what's going to happen is the physics are completely different for those speakers. And so they're not going to carry, the sound won't carry the same way at all in a theater as it did in your mixing studio. So you have to hear it in the theater. When people mix these movies, they're mixing them in a theater-sized volume that is typically 50, 55 feet long, 30, 35 feet, 40 feet wide. That's how big the volume is to do that mix, because they have to hear what it's going to sound like in that volume. So you want to think about those things as well.
Next question.
Next question's from Zach Stylesmith in Chautauqua, New York. I work at a house of worship with a particularly soft-spoken presenter and have trouble capturing their voice during presentations while they are at the lectern, even with a condenser mic. Thoughts or advice for better voice capture?
Well, I think Bill Davis knows something about voice capture. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, having done voice work for most of my career, I will tell you, you cannot escape the physics of this. The best way to handle somebody who has a quiet voice is to get the mic extremely close to their mouth. I would typically recommend some sort of headset mic. Now they're making them so small and insignificant that it really doesn't color the appearance of the presenter very much, but that mic sitting right at the corner of the mouth means even if she's whispering or he's whispering, you will not have trouble understanding them. And we talk about the inverse square things, and I'll do this just very quickly. The difference between 6 inches from a mic capsule and 1 inch from a mic capsule is 6 times 6 is 36 times more present, closer than it is far. That works in feet too. So 10 feet versus 1 feet is a 10 to 1 or 100 times roughly more presence on the microphone. So getting a mic close is going to be, I think, your number one solution for whoever's presenting.
Alexander?
100% headset is absolutely the first thing you should do. I find that lectern mics, because they're on a gooseneck, sometimes you got to realize a lot of people don't have good mic technique, right? So getting that mic as close as possible, that's the first thing that you should do. The other thing too that can really help, and I've tuned quite a few church PA systems, is that oftentimes they are not tuned when you go into that room. You really need somebody that understands how to do audio, and really a lot of this stuff is also gain staging. I can't tell you how many times I've gone into a room and someone was soft-spoken, and it was just really a gain staging issue that can be fixed by ringing out the room and properly setting the gain properly. And also a little bit of processing can help in that way. So headset, processing, room tuning, gain staging, all of those things have to happen together to get the best possible sound.
Alex?
Headset mics are really useful in this environment. So, if you can get a headset mic on them, the key is with a headset mic, inside the room, you don't need the little wind thing, the wind that you don't. You don't. Like, I know, like when you see people put those on an inside vent, you're like, oh, come on. like who did this? Now, the reason they do that is because they pull them oftentimes too far up, and then you need to have it there. So the key is you take that off, and just because a lot of people resist it, because and the reason I say this is that a lot of people will resist putting a headset mic on because of that little muff at the end, right? Because they think it looks weird. When they take that off, it often will get it past that, get them past that, over that process. So the thing is that what you do is you want to pull it back so that it is just behind the corner of their mouth. It's about 1 centimeter behind the corner of their mouth right here. And then what you're going to do is they can do it or you can do it, but you'd have your thumb in here and you take your finger here and you just pull it out just a little bit. And what you're going to do is it means that when you put your thumb in here under the ear, and you pull it out with your finger here, you create the pivot point for your headset mic. And this is using like a Countryman or a DPA. The pivot point becomes back here. So there's not anything touching. When you pull it out this way, there's nothing's going to touch there. Now, you may have to pull it in. It depends on who used it last, because a lot of people do all this weird bending stuff that screws up the whole thing. But if it's a relatively clean mic, you can pull it out like that. And what you're going to do is you're going to create a little space here, but it's also, you're going to create a gap that goes all the way up there. Now, one thing you're going to notice about a lot of these headsets, they got this little rubber grommet that everyone pulls to the front. That's supposed to be right where it touches the skin. So pull that little rubber grommet back up right to where it touches, right where you did that little push there, and you should get very, very little noise. Again, the reason to take the muff off is mostly not. It's not going to change the signal that much, but what it does do is it keeps people from wanting to put it on because they think it looks weird. Once you have just a little wire going down, most people can't see it, especially if you match skin color to the headset. Mickey pointed out that foam protects against rapid movement, but most people doing presentations, in my experience, haven't had that much rapid movement where it would make that much of a difference.
Guy?
Yeah, it depends on the house of worship. Like at ours, a head-worn mic wouldn't fly. The way that ours flows, it just wouldn't work. I've sold tons and tons of H6s from Countryman, and that would be, if you did go that route, that's the mic that I would recommend. But I would look at getting an Audio-Technica lectern mic. So replace the one that you got if that's the issue. A lot of times it's just simply coaching the person and letting them hear. So go ahead and do a recording and let them know, like, hey, this is what it sounds like when you talk this way. So most of the folks that we have, they'll grab the mic before they begin to talk and they'll move it into position because it's a gooseneck. That's what it's able to do. It's flexible. It's a flexible arm and they can move it around. So if you let people know, though, like one gentleman has the opposite effect where he pummels the mic. His P's, man, in our house of worship, it rattles your skull when he pops that thing. So I let him know, hey, man, yeah, can you talk at a 45 so that your gust of air doesn't hit that thing because it's shocking to my brain when you do that. So sometimes it's just coaching. So let people know how they sound and what your challenge is.
Next question.
Chester Sweeney in Las Vegas, Nevada from the QR code is asking, I keep seeing Behringer xenyx mixers. Was wondering for the category, how are the quality on these mixers? 1 being the worst, 10 being the best.
Alexander?
I don't want to use a scale. They're okay. They're utilitarian. They're not fantastic. I lump them in the same category as the Mackie Mix line, which is at a similar price point as well. For a little bit more money, I would seriously look at something like, if you're going to stick with an analog console, look at the Tascam model series, Model 8, Model 12, 16, 24. Those are significantly better. They have some more features. You can record to an SD card. I think the Model 8 is a pretty decent price. Not as cheap as some of the Behringers, but the preamps are going to sound cleaner. And the just overall build quality is a little bit better. But they're fine. They're utilitarian. Don't expect that much out of them.
Courtney?
Yeah, I'd maybe give them a 6. They came out with the xenyx to compete with the Mackie Onyx. Notice the similarity of the name. Preamps, which had discrete transistor front end first stage of the preamp, then it goes to an op amp for the final amplification stage in it. So they're not really quiet, but they're not very they're quieter than they were previously. if you get the Behringers after they bought Midas, then the preamps improved quite a bit with 32Ms. After they bought the Midas company, I think their first mixers that had Midas preamps in them were after 2010. So if you're buying a contemporary one, maybe a 7.
Guy?
Yeah, it depends on the model. It looks like actually it is in here, the X1204. I'd have to look if that's the one that we were bundling in a system. I didn't appreciate the hiss on the xenyx line. I would have given that thing like a 3.5. I mean, it was horrible to me, but it depends on the mic and how much impedance there is. So if it has something where like an SM7B where it needs a lot of gain, all that noise is going to creep in. So this is where spending a little extra money, or if you're just recording, if it's line level stuff that's coming in then all day, yeah, you can use that stuff. So it depends on what kind of mic and if it's voice or if it's a loud instrument. But yeah, I would do your research on YouTube and see if there's any folks that have put up some nice samples with the mics that you'll be using, and that way you can know before you buy it. And it looks like if you're getting it from Sweetwater, you can always return it if you don't like it. But there's other models that a little more money. It's that buy once, cry once thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of Behringer stuff besides just the xenyx that has made a lot of buzz this week being on sale. Pro tip, if you do buy something on sale, make sure that you update the address in B&H to your new address, or your Flow 8 will be 500 miles away. Next question.
From the QR code, Michael R. in McLean, Virginia. Have a question about playing a single song for a meeting taking place in a hotel ballroom. Maybe you play once or twice. The song is from Earth, Wind, Fire. How would you approach this scenario to cover my org from a legal and compliance standpoint?
Bill?
There is a technical answer and there's a practical answer. Technical answer, yes, you are in violation of copyright and somebody could come after you. That's the technical answer. You are using a copyright piece of information and you're not compensating the holder of said copyrights. From a practical point of view, though, almost nobody, if this is a contained meeting and you're playing a song for a limited group of people, have any interest in trying to track you down and slap you down. Now, the one thing I'd be careful about, though, is if you're recording this meeting and then you're going to distribute it on the web or something like that, that incidental music you used beforehand will become part of your webcast or broadcast, and that could trigger a flag of some kind on you. So it just depends on your assessment of the risk and how much risk you want to put there. The risk of just playing it in for a small group is negligible to the point of almost nothing. As you spread it out there, your risk increases and you have to figure out where you're comfortable.
Alex?
I agree with Bill. I think that one of the things to look at is a lot of the venues are going to have blanket, or some of them will have ASCAP BMI licenses, for anything played within the venue anyway. So you may not have to deal with all of those things. So that's Mickey. Mickey pointed out the same thing. Check if the venue has an ASCAP or BMI license, and a lot of times they have both. So they cover that typically. And the chances of this really coming back, unless you're, when you start going over 1,000 people or 2,000 people, you may want to start thinking about those things. And if you're going to go on tour, you have to think about those things because it's repeated usage. But if you're doing it once or twice during a show, I mean, every event that I've worked on that's small, that's not by a large brand, large brands will license everything that they're going to use throughout their tour, or throughout the bits and pieces that they have there. But everybody else just plays whatever they're going to play, So I haven't, I've never seen anybody. This is not usually where people are going to hunt you down, So I think that if you're really looking for it, there's clearinghouses that you can go to that I don't know what they are anymore because I don't have to deal with it very often. But first, I would see if there's an ASCAP BMI license. Second, you can go to a clearinghouse to see if you can release those tracks. But third, no one's coming. It's like driving 58 miles an hour in a 55 zone.
Next question.
Mark Steele in Orlando, Florida is asking thoughts on the new Mac Mini models reported by Mark Gurman.
Tom.
Well, I was thinking about this and I thought, I buy really nice monitors, and while I used to have iMacs, every time you'd switch one out, you're getting rid of the monitor too. So are we going with the smaller form factor so that we can have an invisible computer, maybe mounted on the back of the monitor? I kind of like the idea.
Jason?
Yeah, for those who aren't addicted to Bloomberg, this came up yesterday, and the idea is that the new Mac Minis are going to be roughly the size of an Apple TV. And if that's the case, then they're certainly going to sell a lot of Thunderbolt docks.
Alexander?
I love this idea if they manage to shrink it in half. I don't know how much smaller it's going to be, but the current Mac Minis are fantastic because they fit on a 1U rack shelf, so you can have two side by side. If they make it half the size it currently is, you could potentially have 4 in a 1U rack shelf, and that, yeah, I'm really excited about that.
Alex?
It'll be interesting to see whether they keep the Pro versions at the same size, because there's a lot of size problems as it comes to all the connectivity. So one of the big advantages of the Pro is the 4 USB-Cs on the back, plus the Ethernet, plus the power, plus the HDMI outputs. And so I think that there's a lot of advantages to having that larger. When I say it's amazing that I would say the larger form factor of the current Mac Mini. I do think that what we could see them doing is having a mini Mac Mini. I don't know how micro mini or micro Mac or whatever they want to call it. If it got half the size, is really getting closer to the size of an Apple TV. And there is a version of this that the Mini becomes an Apple TV. Basically, they replace the Apple TV with a Mini at $399, $299 or $399. Where you have a full compute device that just, if you're going to upgrade and they get rid of at this point, the Apple TV and the Mini are quickly approaching each other. so in price and performance. So that could be another possibility here. And I also have to say, I saw Mark on, I think it was Bloomberg, giving this in video. And Mark, if you're out there, I know Mark and I have been on shows together. I'd love to really work on your setup. That's all I got to say. I mean, you're so smart. It'd be great to have a good mic. so anyway, so hopefully he'll reach out.
Next question.
From the QR code, Gabriela Shesho Mistiera and Suse Marie is asking, how much does publication platform and hardware and software capabilities play into genesis of concepts and the ideation phase of 3D production projects?
Jesse?
We work backwards from platform on all of our projects when we're in the ideation phase. And what I mean by that is we want to start at the end and see how many questions we can answer moving back through production. So figure out the distribution platform, and that will tell you a lot about how the production is going to go. Move backwards from there, figure out your post environment and how you're going to edit this thing. That'll tell you a lot about how you shoot and how you approach physical production. How you approach physical production is going to tell you a lot about how you approach pre-production, and that will inform how you handle the ideation phase. And we do this for all projects.
Alex?
One of the things we think about, I agree with Jesse. I mean, you definitely pay attention to those things. One of the things that we think about related to that is also where we might want to use it in the future. So one of the things that we had an issue in the late 90s where it was very hard to render 3D at full resolution. So a lot of us cut corners in Star Wars Episode 1, The Matrix, and other ones that were heavy visual effects movies. We literally rendered for what the screen resolution was going to be at a third generation copy of the original film plate, which was not even 1920 by 1080. And so we rendered all of those things at that lower resolution because no one's going to be able to tell in that process. But when you see, like, for instance, The Matrix, I actually went to see it in a theater on the 4K up-res, and it was all sharp except for every major effect shot. It's soft and then sharp and then soft and then sharp because those were cut. And, Star Wars is as high resolution as it's going to be. And it's because, again, it was delivered for the format that it was designed for, but not delivered for the future version of that format. And you don't want to go too far down the future, but you do want to think about future-proofing things.
Jesse?
And we never use these metrics to shut down creativity. So if you're going to be posting in DaVinci Resolve and the DP prefers to shoot on the Alexa, we would never say, don't shoot on the Alexa because we're posting in Resolve. You should be shooting on an Ursa or something. Never, ever, ever, ever use these metrics to shut down creativity. Only use them to open avenues of creativity at the ideation stage.
Just a reminder, we do have quite a few questions today, but there's always room for more, so you can get those questions into us in Makana. Also, if you're not in Makana or you're watching this later, you can go to askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global. It's open 24/7. Get those questions in. If you are in Makana today, though, remember to vote. I think it's going to be quite the exciting second hour and end of the first hour. So we need your help getting this show directed. But let's get on to the next question.
Chester Sweeney in Las Vegas, Nevada from the QR code's asking, on the Behringer PMP 2000D 14-channel 2,000-watt powered mixer, I see the word europower on it. Does this mean it's noisy like the eurorack?
Alexander?
Not necessarily. The thing about Behringer is they make some nice products and they make others that are not so great. I'm not a huge fan of their powered mixers, but like when somebody tells me they like a movie that I think is objectively horrible, I say, if you're enjoying it and you like it, I'm happy for you.
Next question.
Vic Hernandez in Springfield, Missouri is asking, do you think an 11 Labs voice being used on the house floor have any impact?
Alex?
In the case that they're using it in, of course, they were trying to find a case, I'm sure, that made sense for everybody. But in the case that they're using it for, you have someone who has a speech impediment that's building up. And so they analyzed all of her past speeches to be able to rebuild her ability to give speeches because she's no longer going to be able to do that over time. And so I think it makes sense. And I think that this is where things are going to always be complicated, which is that in some cases, it gives her the opportunity to express herself in her voice more powerfully. And in other cases, it could obviously be used to take advantage of, people could have her say anything at that point with that model or with those kinds of models. So like many things, AI is going to have both good and bad uses.
Courtney?
Yeah, I concur with Alex. In a case where a person gets a neuromuscular disease or something and loses their ability to speak, this is a great boon for that person for public speaking because they can just use that to generate speech. And while they're there in person, and that way there's no confusion as to who's manufacturing and who's approved this speech. The problem of people generating false versions is always going to be there. But the closer that AI comes to actually matching the speech of a person, it's going to be a problem for anybody. But, if Stephen Hawking, ran into this problem, he had that custom speech synthesizer that was unmistakable from anyone else. And later, I think they tried to generate a clone, but they didn't have many samples of his speech before he was affected. So it is a problem. But I think it is a great boon for people that are afflicted with diseases that want to be able to speak fluently and continuously in a form that they used to be able to speak. It's great for them.
Next question.
Chester Sweeney in Las Vegas, Nevada from the QR code's asking, the Behringer Pro Mixer DX626 3-channel DJ mixer is $129 on Sweetwater. Is it worth the price for running old tech for post or pre-mixing?
Alexander?
Well, undeniably, that is a fantastic price, so it's probably a fairly low-risk product. But generally with DJ stuff, I recommend sticking with the brands that are well entrenched in the industry. That would be namely Pioneer, Denon, and also Allen & Heath has some fantastic DJ mixers. I would probably actually, on the more affordable side, I would probably look at some of the smaller channel Allen & Heath zone mixers before you even look at this one.
Yeah, and Mickey brings up a good point in the chat, and that most DJ gear is purpose-built for DJs. And, DJs are great, but the environment that their sound is going out in, having it be 100% pristine and being able to be critically, approaching perfection isn't always what they're looking for. They're trying to make sure that the room has a good energy. They're trying to make sure that the music sounds good in the room, but it might not be up to your standards if you're trying to get this into production. So just be careful about what the mission is. Next question.
Jeff Cohen in Miami Beach, Florida is asking, Alex, from your Spatial TWiT stream Sunday, I was surprised how reverberant the studio sounded. Obviously, different type of mic, far away, etc. So what would you say contributes most to the show's great final audio? Mic choice, processors?
Oh, sorry, I didn't raise my hand. I apologize.
Go ahead, Alex.
So we only use the phone for that. So we had a last minute glitch with the interface that we were using into the iPhone. Connecting interfaces to the iPhone is a little quirky, and so we I didn't have at the time. I didn't have a cable for. I didn't have a USB-C to USB-B cable for a USB Pre 2, which is what works in everything. So I was using a mix pre, and it didn't. It wasn't seeing it correctly, and I was also I had a Shure X2U, but it didn't have any way to switch to line input. It's mic only. So, and TWiT didn't have a way to easily attenuate that, for that input. So we just chose to use the phone input, and we kind of wanted to see what that was like because it felt very like you're there. But generally it sounds pretty clean coming out of the mics because they're using high LPR40s. There's not a lot of work that they have to do to it. There'll be another version that we'll post probably in Discord to that Spatial. If you have the headset, you can even watch it on Safari, but the headset is a lot better. That will marry the production audio back to the Spatial. So that should be up in the next couple of days.
Yeah, as somebody who was watching the Spatial stream, at first I was like, oh, that's such a bummer. They don't have the classic TWiT sound. But then after about 10 minutes, I was like, but I wouldn't get that if I were sitting in the room. And then as I'm sitting there, I was like, oh, okay, cool. So it's kind of like I'm sitting there. I'm excited to do an A/B test and listen to maybe not the whole 2.5, 3 hours, but a little bit of it just to see like, how is my feeling different?
Absolutely.
Next question.
Talalik Lopez Waterman in Cologne, Germany is asking, do you have an Apple Silicon restart schedule? If so, what is your interval?
Jesse?
We do restarts under one of two circumstances. The first is if some software is acting wonky and we just want to kind of blow the dust off of the entire computer, we shut down and start everything back up from scratch. And the other is at the end of the day, if we realize that we don't have any overnight renders to do or backups to do, we, like pop a micro champagne cork and we shut down the computer, just for fun.
Jason?
Computers don't take any time to boot anymore, so my rule is once a week or whenever I get bored.
Alex?
It's about once a week because for me, most of my computers get restarted before I do a major project. So if I'm going to use something, I'm going to do a presentation, or for me, doing something with Michael Krasny, since we have Gray Matter on Fridays, what I do is I kind of get everything all set up the way I wanted, all the names, all the projects set up, and then I restart the computer and load everything up. So there's literally no cruft that's around. So usually before a major project is when I restart them.
Next question.
Robin Cutshaw in Atlanta, Georgia is asking, do we have sufficient positive experience with loopback on macOS Sonoma to be comfortable with upgrading from Ventura?
Jason?
I would say yes, and only very recently. Loopback has done some major back-end work to adhere, I think, as well as they can to Apple's requirements. And I found that with the most recent versions of both Sonoma and Loopback, it's quite stable.
Alex?
No. So the time to update. Remember, it's not just the computer. It is all the software that's being written for it, all the peripherals that are connected to it, all the other things like that. If you're just using it for Excel, or not Excel, but numbers or Excel, maybe. But otherwise, I would definitely wait until, like, typically my production schedule for my I will upgrade one or two of my computers so that I can talk about it on Mac Break and I can have, and I can see what's happening and so on and so forth. But I will move to the new operating system, to Sonoma, in about February or March of next year. I'm going to give it as much time as it, Sequoia, I'm sorry.
Sonoma's the one now, right?
Yeah, it is Vision Positive Loopback. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Sonoma, I think, is
I was about to say, do I strike you as a big Excel guy, Alex?
I was off by a version. I can't keep track of all these California things, so I can't remember which one is which. So
Sonoma 14.5 is correct.
Yeah, if you're looking at Sonoma, I think that it's probably fine. If you have there's a lot of audio stuff that you may have trouble with. So if you're doing heavy audio things, you have to look at every piece of software as to whether it's working or not. You might still be back on Mojave for some of these. So anyway, so I think that so be careful if you have a lot of heavy audio needs. But outside of that, I think that Sonoma is probably fine. But as far as the next version, I usually wait until February, March, April, somewhere in that range. And that's when I upgraded all these computers was in, I think, April.
Yeah, and I'll second what Jason said just regarding loopback specifically. They changed. They used to use their ACE kernel extension in order to get their audio magic to work, and they upgraded that now to the audio routing kit, or now they're calling it the ARC. So we went from the ACE to the ARC. And when that first came out, it was causing all sorts of issues. There has been some general core audio stability challenges with Sonoma in general, but as Jason said, in the last few weeks, they've came back around with those with that audio routing kit, done some updates, and it's been much more stable. So best of luck. Next question.
From the QR code, Larry Avery in San Dimas, California is asking, in your opinion, does Topaz Video AI as a plugin bring significant additional value to Resolve Studio? You need Studio version to use it. Thanks.
Go ahead, Bill.
If you're in a workflow where you're dealing with video noise and stuff like that, I think I wouldn't want to live without it. I mean, it has some really great algorithms in it, and it does a good job. Now, my goal is never to have to use anything like that, and that starts with shooting in the field properly, making sure things have enough light, are properly exposed. And in fact, these days, most of my video comes from professional shooters who are working in industry and know what they're doing. So I don't think I have pulled out any sort of video manipulation or noise reduction by necessity in probably 5 or 6 years. But through the course of my career, yes, I have gotten things from the outside, and have even misshot things myself where having digital processing, AI-based processing, noise reduction that works would have been a very useful thing. So it just depends on your workflow.
Alex?
I use Topaz for reframing, or not reframing, but adding frames, subtracting frames, noise reduction, and scaling. But I always use their own application to do that. So I haven't used it inside of anything else. I simply open them up and process them as needed. And it's very effective when needed. Obviously, I'm never going to do that if I don't have to. But we've taken things where I had a 24 source that had to go to 60 for a variety of reasons. And for a 1.5 hour source, it was 72 hours of rendering, but it looked great. So Topaz did a great job of adding all those frames back in. But there are times I did another one where we did the exact same thing with the sports. It was, people running around and it just fell apart. So you have to kind of look at those. Topaz is very valuable, but there are limits to the technology of a lot of fast motion, especially things that self-occlude. It's not going to be able to figure out what it's looking at.
And when you're using any one of these plugins that is Topaz is a plugin to Resolve, much like they have their Photo AI has a plugin to Photoshop. Sometimes when it's negotiating that little round trip from your editor back to the Topaz plugin and then back to your editor, I've had some stability issues, at least in Photoshop there, where as it's trying to round trip, it crashes and it is acting kind of funky. So if you're experiencing anything like that, or if you don't want to upgrade to Studio, you may want to use the video AI as a standalone thing, and then just cook that asset before you bring it into Resolve. That way, you're not having to worry about the integration. Next question.
Palalik Lopez Waterman in Cologne, Germany is asking, has there been a sea change in politics as we see more campaign gatherings on Zoom? Is this something that is going to expand to all sides in U.S. politics?
Go ahead, Bill.
Totally. Everything is changing out there. The amount of memification of everything on both sides in the politics is going to continue. They're going after eyeballs. That's the whole point of any kind of promotional thing where you're trying to get a candidate, product, or anything else in front of the public. You just want to be where the eyeballs are. And a number of eyeballs that are watching all these various social feeds easily outstrips broadcast now and all the traditional ways that happens. So you're going to see nothing but more and more and more of that. And I think there's also going to be a shift from less formal things to more of the memification and the more relaxed little snippets and bites, because you get a good one that's really funny or cleverly made. It gets a lot more mileage than any of those old traditional political ads. So yeah, I think you're going to get nothing but more of that as we go along.
Jesse?
I believe the sea change happened years ago. We're just seeing the sea change. They're going kind of more public facing with the sea change. A top level politician is spending about a third of their day on phone calls or Zoom meetings now, trying to accumulate resources, and sometimes those resources are votes or the eyeballs of their constituents. Sometimes those resources are dollars, and those hours are spent, trying to negotiate donations to their future campaigns. But they've long been on the phone for not a majority of their day, but a significant portion of their day. We're just seeing it now because it's being applied to campaigns a little more aggressively.
Courtney?
Yeah, like Jesse says, I see this as a good tool for fundraising from whales. They used to have, these fundraising dinners for politicians that you would gather together, a lot of billionaires together in one room where they can socialize with each other. These days, a lot of them don't have enough time to all fly to one place on their private jets and get together for a fundraiser. So I guess it's a way for that. As far as just an open Zoom meeting with a lot of people, voters attending, I would think that unless it sets a new record, it doesn't have a lot of exposure other than to the people that attend. It doesn't get a lot of news coverage, and TV coverage is what it's about in the way of in rallies and so on. And I don't think it's as effective for the person who's running, because they don't get all that immediate feedback of a rally where you'd have 10 or 20,000 people in an auditorium, or 5,000 or 6,000 people in an auditorium somewhere listening and cheering you back and reacting to your political speeches.
Alex?
The numbers, we've already talked about that this would eventually be the future, and here it comes. That eventually you realize that it doesn't matter whether it's as effective per person. If you're bringing in 100 times more people, even if it's only half as effective, you're still making way more money this is really much more of I think less of the big whales you're still doing in person, and you're handshaking. The $1,500 a night, $1,500 a plate or $2,000 a plate or $5,000 a plate is still going to be there. But for retail, what we would call retail fundraising, this is pretty effective. 700,000 people, 500,000 people. Those are the kind of numbers that we're starting to see roll around in some of these streams. And so it's a pretty effective way to generate lots of small donations, sub $100 donations. And we're going to see this. We see this. This is the trend that we talk about a lot here. This is not for politics, but this is for theaters, but it's very similar, which is that we saw this huge push up during the pandemic. Then everyone came back, or a lot of people started coming back, and they started going the other direction. And that is because the technology came up underneath it and started to fill in that technology that was driven by that, and that bounce is starting to happen. As campaigns really get good at this, and the Biden campaign was actually very effective at this in the last election. They just weren't doing so many public ones. They were doing many small ones that were looking at pinpointing supporters and so on and so forth. In this case, they're just going mass production and putting it out there. I think everyone, now that it's opened the door and everyone's eyes are open to what's possible there. In 2 years, you'll see a big jump forward in online, and in 4 years, huge chunks of the campaign will be online.
Jesse?
Courtney, I got to disagree with you just a little bit, and that is, in my opinion, broadcast news is not anything of the North Star that it once was. I believe that audiences usually go to broadcast news now to confirm their opinions, not to discover new ones, and that means that the ROI on that for politicians who are trying to make conversions is just going to keep plummeting off the edge like that. Whereas with a direct connection through something like a Zoom meeting, you should be able to move the needle in your direction because you're creating a more personal connection with the undecided constituent.
Go ahead, Alex.
As people start to fully take advantage of what Zoom and other platforms can do, the thing is that I can talk to 600,000 people or 100,000 people. I can then subdivide them into groups of 5 or 10 or 100 or 800 for delegates to talk to. Then I can put them all back into a plenary, and these are the kind of things that audio can do, for these types of things already. And you're going to see more features like that. And as you start to get really good at how you pinpoint those things, people are going to look at the physical version of this as antiquated.
And I think there's also room for interactivity in a way that in a way that you wouldn't have been able to see, in a big in-person event. And it's one of the things that we've talked about a lot here is when you're bringing interactivity into one of these events, how much more engagement and how much more connected somebody feels to whatever that thing is. We live in exciting times. Next question.
From the QR code, Russell K. in Brooklyn, Maine. If I wanted to create a immersive experience, audio and video, for the Vision Pro, is it even possible right now? I have the R5C Canon camera with the stereo 5.2 millimeter lens. I've heard that Apple has a proprietary camera for that content.
Jason?
Yeah, it's possible, but every single one of these is its own kind of unique snowflake piece of art that, every single part of the production timeline is complicated and kludgy. And I think it's going to get a lot better with the new Blackmagic camera that's, I think, 8K per eye. But yeah, for right now, it's possible, but not easy.
Alex?
As a turnkey solution, the R5C is probably the best solution. So that is probably where you want to go with it. And so it is. You're going to get dual. It's an 8K sensor, so you're going to get 4K per eye. And so there's no live output for it, but you can definitely get it for processing. Also think about audio. Think about an ambisonic mic of some sort to capture some audio that is going to give you that environment as well. But it's probably the best until the Blackmagic comes out, and still will be a great one for the price. So there is not a lot of options under $10,000 to do this. The Blackmagic camera will probably not come in under $10,000. Most of us are laying bets on $19,999 or $24,999. That's probably where we think that's going to come in. If they come in any lower than that, they're getting super aggressive. But that's what we would expect for that sensor, and as high as $30,000 for that. But that'll be dual. If what they've said so far is dual 8K per eye, 90 frames a second, which is amazing. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens.
And if you have that R5C that's shooting this side by side and you're trying to convert it to MVHEVC for the Vision, Apple has released developer documentation on how to do that and what the support is. There's something buried in compressor, but I haven't been able to get it to work. I've tried to make that conversion happen. But just look to Apple's documentation if you're trying to get a workflow down for this. We have a feeling it's going to get a lot easier as these, especially as the Blackmagic cameras get out there.
This is because the advantage that we have, what's exciting about Blackmagic doing this specifically is not just that they are bringing in that they're making the camera, it's that they own Resolve. so they're building the camera, and they're going to build a lot of the tools into Resolve that are going to allow you to do not only add the video, not only take the video in and edit it, but to do all the transformations. And, oh, by the way, Fusion's there, the audio's there, all the bits and pieces are there. So it's going to be, it's a pretty exciting post-production workflow. And I think that obviously Apple will be supporting it with Final Cut as well and Motion. They already have a bunch of the tools that you need in there, not quite all of them, but so those are going to, and the advantage for Apple there is that it helps push the industry forward. No one else if you want to get into this industry, you're going to see a lot of people starting to produce content for it, and you're going to have to Adobe will have to upgrade, and Adobe's already done a pretty good job of keeping up with the Joneses here in relationship to this, because they have a lot of the immersive tools that they picked up a long time ago as well.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, OpenAI has said users could easily become addicted to ChatGPT's voice mode. As large language models become more pervasive, might addiction be a more significant issue?
Jason?
Okay, that's not what they said. This article, it talks about the anthropomorphization. I'm glad I got that right the first time. And the concern that people will be drawn to things if they are good answers, and bear with me now, spoken in better voices. Yes, people will enjoy that, and some of them will in turn probably become dependent upon them. See Google becoming a verb. That said, that this Wired article is a little bit loose on the facts.
Alex?
Sorry, I raised my hand for the wrong one.
Oh, no worries. Jesse?
If we're talking just like the base functions of human psychology and the base definitions of addiction, anything that produces an emotional response can become an addiction. Whether that response is comfort, joy, anger, whatever the response is, it is possible to become addicted to any emotional stimulation that you get, and you just have to be hyper cautious about anything that brings you regular comfort. Take a moment or two to step outside of what brings you comfort and find something that brings you discomfort. Build a life rich with sandpaper.
Courtney?
I mean, I've become dependent on voice-activated assistants. I have the Echoes from Amazon and the Google Homes around in almost every room. And I have become dependent on them to turn lights on and off, to turn air conditioners on and off, to turn TVs on and off, to find programs on the TV. And when the internet goes down, I really miss them. But becoming emotionally dependent on a ChatGPT, it's kind of a love-hate relationship. It's like when my Echo starts telling me something I don't want to hear, I hate it and try and make it stop as fast as possible. And with ChatGPT, where they're responding in full sentences and much longer responses, I think it would become a little bit tedious. And I don't think, like Her, the movie Her, we would become emotionally dependent on them because I think they would become more annoying and you would file for divorce from your emotional assistant.
Alexander?
I haven't read the Wired article, but even if the article did make that claim about that concern, just remember with smartphones, right, which are still relatively new, since smartphones have been around, since we've had the App Store, it's been, 16 years now, and we're only just now starting to get a better picture of how people use these things and how it's actually affecting them as far as addiction, as far as their psychology and behavior and everything now. So it took a long time. So I think we're not at the point where AI and LLMs and everything are super ubiquitous, but I think in the next couple of years it probably will be. And it probably will be a while before we'll be able to have enough data on how it's actually affecting us. So I don't think, the question is, it's still out there. I don't think we're going to know for a long time.
Jason?
Didn't mean to come on too hard to you, Douglas. I wanted to point out the only place that the word addicted appears anywhere in the article is talking about a single TikTok video where a guy starts using ChatGPT in a movie theater. That is the only place where it's even directly shown. So, that's it.
Yeah, words matter. So when we're writing about these things and talking about these things, we've got to be important to not be too glib. But I think we got time for one more quick one. Go ahead. Next question.
From the QR code, Magda in Los Angeles is asking, what software do you think Chris Piasik uses for his iPad demos on YouTube? The frames and backgrounds are his original artwork. He also has additional graphics pushed during his live streams.
Go ahead, Guy, quick.
I'm going to guess that this is just regular OBS or Streamlabs OBS. Streamlabs OBS has a bunch of templates that you can buy. If you go through there, it's pretty much like OBS, but it's you pay for these templates. So I would guess that that's what that is. It doesn't look like they're using an ATEM or any hardware in this.
All right, that's going to take us to the top of the first hour. I want to thank everybody for the questions and for keeping us on our toes. We've got a couple exciting days coming up. Of course, as always, we have our Saturday Q&A. That is our weekend Q&A show, so it's only an hour. It's also a show where we try to get new people in, try to test out the system and see how they feel. So Alexander's been doing a great job hosting Saturdays. That's going to be a streaming only, though, not VOD, so you've got to hop into Makana to catch that. Also, Sunday is our introspection day, and that's where we get a little bit more philosophical about the show and talk about why are we doing it, what do we like, what do we don't like, and we don't VOD that one either. It's live only, so check out Makana for those. Also, we've got on Saturday our panelist meeting, so that's going to be at noon. Oh, for me, sorry. It'll be at just after the show, normal show end time, so 9 o'clock